The sun stretched its golden fingers across the suburban landscape, painting the world in hues of amber and gold. It was one of those mornings where the air felt thick with possibility, the kind that made you want to step outside and breathe deeply, breathe deeply. The neighborhood was quiet but alive. Birds chirped their cheerful melodies, lawnmowers hummed softly in the distance, and the occasional breeze carried the faint scent of freshly cut grass. Dwayne Johnson and John Cena jogged side by side, their muscular frames glistening under the warm daylight. Both men wore simple athletic gear, Dwayne in a navy blue tank top and black running shorts, while John sported a gray sleeveless hoodie paired with dark green track pants. Their sneakers slapped rhythmically against the pavement, a steady beat that matched their breathing. "Man, this heat is no joke," John said, wiping sweat from his brow. "Tell me about it," Dwayne replied, chuckling. "But hey, we've been through worse." They turned a corner onto a tree-lined street, the shade offering brief relief from the scorching sun. That's when something caught their attention. A small lemonade stand nestled on the front lawn of a modest house. A neatly painted wooden sign read "Fresh Lemonade $1" in bold yellow letters, the paint slightly smudged but clearly done with care. Behind the stand stood a young black girl, no older than 12, wearing a bright red t-shirt tucked into denim shorts. Her hair was pulled back into two neat braids adorned with tiny beads that clicked softly whenever she moved. "How about we take a break?" Dwayne suggested, nudging John playfully. "Sounds like a plan," John agreed, slowing his pace. As they approached, the girl perked up immediately, her eyes lighting up with excitement. "Hey there! Would you like some fresh lemonade? Ice cold." Dwayne leaned casually on the counter, flashing his trademark grin. "That depends. How good is it?" She folded her arms confidently, her expression serious yet playful. "Best lemonade in town. Guaranteed." John chuckled, shaking his head. "All right, you sold us. 2 cups, please." The girl nodded enthusiastically, carefully pouring 2 servings of bright yellow lemonade into plastic cups. As she handed them over, Dwayne reached into his pocket. "How much do we owe you?" $1 per cup. "That'll be $2 total," she said proudly, her voice filled with determination. John handed over 2 crisp dollar bills but couldn't help but ask, "It's summer. Shouldn't you be out playing with your friends instead of running a lemonade stand?" The girl's smile softened, and she shrugged. "I'm saving up for college." Both men exchanged glances, clearly impressed. John took a sip of his lemonade and let out a satisfied sigh. "Well, this lemonade alone proves you've got a solid work ethic." Dwayne reached into his pocket again, this time pulling out a thick wad of cash. He peeled off 10 crisp $1,000 bills and placed them gently on the wooden counter. The girl's eyes widened in shock. "Wait. What?" John smiled warmly. "You deserve this. It's not charity, it's an investment in your future." Tears welled in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away, trying to maintain her composure. She finally nodded, her voice trembling. "Thank you. This is going to change everything for my family." John patted her shoulder. "Just promise us one thing." She looked up, still in disbelief. "What?" Dwayne smiled. "One day when you've made it, find someone else who needs help and do the same for them." She nodded quickly. "I promise." John finished his lemonade in one final gulp. "Well, that's the best drink I've had in a long time." Dwayne nodded in agreement. Definitely worth the stop. As they turned to continue their jog, the distant roar of motorcycle engines echoed down the street. The sudden shift in atmosphere sent a chill through the air. Neither of them realized that trouble was about to follow. The peaceful rhythm of the suburban street was shattered by the deep rumbling growl of motorcycle engines. 6 large bikes rolled onto the road, their riders clad in leather jackets adorned with patches and tattoos that spoke of lives lived on the edge. The leader, a tall bald man with a snake tattoo curling around his neck, dismounted first, his boots crunching against the pavement. "Well, well, well," he drawled, his voice dripping with mockery. "What do we have here? A little lemonade operation." The girl stiffened, gripping the edge of the counter tightly. She forced herself to remain calm. "Yes, sir. $1 per cup. Would you like some?" A biker with a jagged scar across his cheek scoffed. $1 for some watered-down sugar juice? That's robbery." The others laughed, their voices laced with disdain. The leader leaned forward slightly, tapping his fingers against his handlebars. "How about we make a deal? You give us some lemonade, and we decide whether it's worth paying for." The girl hesitated, glancing at the stack of cups. Her pulse quickened, but she didn't back down. "That's not how it works. You drink, you pay." A few of the bikers raised their eyebrows, amused by her defiance. One of them grabbed a cup, filled it from the pitcher, and took a slow sip. He smacked his lips obnoxiously before sneering. "Tastes like garbage." He dumped the lemonade onto the ground, and the others erupted into laughter. "You owe me $1, the girl said through gritted teeth. The leader's smirk widened. "And what if I don't feel like paying?" "Huh? You think a little girl is going to tell us what to do?" Another biker casually took a cup, drank from it, then tossed the empty cup onto the ground. "I've had better," he muttered. "That's $2 you owe," the girl pressed, her voice unwavering. The leader laughed, shaking his head in disbelief. "You've got guts, kid. I'll give you that." His gaze flicked past her toward the back of the stand where something caught his eye. His smirk twisted into something darker. "What's this?" he asked, nodding toward the stack of money, the 10 crisp $1,000 bills Dwayne had given her. A wiry biker whistled. "Damn, kid. You making bank selling lemonade." "I didn't steal anything," she shot back, stepping protectively in front of the money. The leader slid off his motorcycle, taking slow, deliberate steps toward her. "Relax. We're just curious. You see, a little girl like you shouldn't be walking around with that kind of cash. People might get the wrong idea." "It's my money. I earned it," she said firmly. "Oh yeah? How?" "Two men bought lemonade and gave me a tip," she answered, keeping her chin high. The bikers burst out laughing. "Oh, that's rich," one cackled. "Some random guys just dropped 10 grand on lemonade? You expect us to believe that?" "I don't care what you believe," she shot back. The leader's grin faded. He stepped closer, looming over her. "Tell you what. Since you're doing so well, how about we help you out? We'll take this off your hands and make sure it's spent properly." He reached past her toward the stack of money. "No," she shouted, slamming both hands down onto the pile, gripping the cash tightly. The leader's expression darkened. "You don't want to do that, kid." Her heart pounded, but she didn't back down. "Get your hands off my money." For a moment, there was silence. The leader studied her, his jaw tightening. Then he exhaled sharply through his nose and let out a slow chuckle. "Brave," he muttered. "Stupid, but brave." One of the bikers cracked his knuckles. "Maybe we ought to teach her a little lesson in respect." The girl braced herself, her mind racing for a way out. And then, a shadow fell over the stand. A deep, powerful voice rang out, cutting through the tension like a blade. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." The bikers froze. The girl turned her head slightly, her breath catching in her throat. Standing behind the bikers, their massive frames radiating an unmistakable aura of dominance, were Dwayne Johnson and John Cena. Both men wore the same athletic gear they had been jogging in earlier, Dwayne in his navy blue tank top and black shorts, John in his gray sleeveless hoodie and green track pants. Their sneakers were still dusty from the road, but their expressions were calm yet charged with barely restrained intensity. The bikers turned, sizing up the two men who had suddenly appeared. The bald leader's smirk returned, but there was something different in his eyes now, a flicker of uncertainty. "Well, well," he drawled, crossing his arms. "Look what we have here." John Cena cracked his neck, then his knuckles. "Yeah. Look what we have here." Dwayne's gaze dropped briefly to the pile of money, then back to the bikers. His voice was calm but tinged with amusement. "I don't think that cash belongs to you boys." The tension in the air thickened. The girl, still gripping her money tightly, took a shaky breath. She wasn't alone anymore. The real fight was about to begin. The six bikers turned their full attention to Dwayne and John, their initial bravado wavering under the weight of the two men's imposing presence. Dwayne and John stood relaxed but unmistakably firm, their sheer size and confidence sending ripples of unease through the group. The bald leader took a slow step forward, his smirk returning as he folded his arms across his broad chest. "Well, well," he said, sizing them up. "Two big boys out for a stroll. You guys lost." John tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "We're exactly where we need to be." Dwayne's gaze flickered down to the girl, still gripping her money with white-knuckled intensity. He looked back at the leader, his voice calm but firm. "That cash doesn't belong to you." The leader chuckled. "Yeah? And what makes you think it belongs to her?" "Because we gave it to her," John said simply. A few of the bikers exchanged looks, shifting slightly on their feet. The weight in John's voice left no room for doubt. The leader, however, refused to let his confidence waver. His smirk twisted into something more predatory. "Right. You two just handed a little girl 10 grand, and I'm supposed to believe that?" "You can believe whatever you want," Dwayne said, his voice dropping a degree colder. "But you're not taking that money." The leader clicked his tongue, shaking his head. "Now that's where we disagree. See, my guys and I were just having a friendly conversation with the kid here. We noticed a whole lot of cash sitting out in the open, and well, we wouldn't want it falling into the wrong hands." "It already has," John muttered. The smirk twitched on the leader's face. "You sure you want to do this, boys? There's 6 of us and only 2 of you." Dwayne exhaled sharply through his nose, as if disappointed. "You guys should really learn how to count." Before the bikers could process what he meant, Dwayne took one deliberate step forward. The shift in energy sent a wave of unease through the group. The leader clenched his jaw, instinctively taking a step back before catching himself. One of the bikers, a thick-set man with a beard like steel wool, squared his shoulders and spat on the ground. "I say we teach these two a lesson." The leader hesitated for a fraction of a second, then let out a short laugh. "Yeah, I think you're right." The moment the words left his mouth, the tension snapped like a pulled wire. The largest of the bikers lunged at Dwayne first, swinging a fist the size of a hammer. But before the punch could land, Dwayne shifted his weight, sidestepping smoothly and driving a devastating elbow into the man's ribs. A loud crack filled the air as the biker staggered backward, wheezing in pain. Another came at John from the side, but he reacted instantly. He ducked the wild swing and countered with a brutal uppercut, sending the biker stumbling backward into the stand. The lemonade pitcher tipped over, spilling its bright yellow contents onto the wooden surface. The girl instinctively stepped back, her heart pounding as she watched the chaos unfold. The third biker hesitated but decided to attack anyway. He grabbed a metal chair from the side of the stand and swung it toward Dwayne's head. But Dwayne caught it midair with one hand, holding it effortlessly before yanking it away and tossing it aside. Before the biker could react, Dwayne grabbed him by the collar and delivered a crushing spinebuster onto the grass. The ground trembled from the impact. The lanky biker with the missing front tooth thought he saw an opening and rushed at John with a rusted chain in hand. John let him get close enough before catching the chain mid-swing, yanking it forward, and flipping the man over his shoulder in a flawless judo throw. The biker hit the pavement with a grunt, the chain clattering beside him. The last two remaining bikers hesitated, their confidence shaken. The bald leader, however, wasn't ready to back down. His face twisted with rage as he pulled a switchblade from his pocket and flicked it open with a sharp click. "All right, that's enough," he growled, pointing the blade at Dwayne. John tensed slightly, but Dwayne remained eerily calm, his eyes locked onto the blade. "Bad idea," Dwayne warned. The leader let out a snarl and lunged, but he never made it close. With almost effortless speed, Dwayne sidestepped and caught the biker's wrist in an iron grip. A pained grunt escaped the man as Dwayne squeezed, forcing his fingers to loosen. The knife clattered to the ground. Dwayne then yanked the biker forward and slammed him chest first against the lemonade stand. The entire wooden structure rattled under the force. The leader gasped, struggling to push himself up, but before he could, John was there, grabbing him by the collar. "You know," John mused, lifting the man off the counter effortlessly, "I was really hoping for more of a challenge." He turned and flung the biker onto the sidewalk, where he landed with a hard thud. The remaining bikers scrambled to their feet, groaning in pain but no longer eager to fight. Dwayne and John stood firm, their expressions unreadable, but the unspoken message was clear: the fight was over. The leader rolled onto his side, coughing, his face red with humiliation. He looked at his men, now scattered and battered, then back at the two men who had just dismantled them without breaking a sweat. Clenching his fist, he knew it was pointless to continue. "Get on your bikes," he rasped, his voice barely above a growl. His men didn't need to be told twice. One by one, they staggered toward their motorcycles, some limping, others clutching their ribs. The engines roared back to life as they mounted their seats, their movements shaky but hurried. The leader gave one last burning glare toward Dwayne and John. "This ain't over," he spat, his voice dripping with venom. John smirked, crossing his arms. "Yeah, it is." Without another word, the bikers revved their engines and sped off down the road, disappearing around the corner. Silence settled over the street like a heavy curtain drawn across a stage. The girl let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her hands, still gripping the money tightly, finally relaxed as the adrenaline began to ebb. Dwayne turned to her, his expression softening into something almost fatherly. "You okay?" he asked, his deep voice filled with genuine concern. She nodded, her grip on the money loosening slightly. Yeah, I think so." John leaned against the counter, glancing at the remnants of the knocked-over lemonade stand. Broken cups littered the ground, and the wooden frame was splintered in places. "Sorry about your stand," John said, his tone apologetic but light. The girl shook her head quickly, her braids bouncing with the movement. "It's fine. I can rebuild it." Dwayne smiled, clearly impressed by her resilience. "That's the right attitude." John clapped his hands together, breaking the tension. "Well, that was a good warm-up." Dwayne chuckled, shaking his head. "Yeah. Now let's clean this up." Together, they began helping her restore the stand. Dwayne picked up the scattered cups, stacking them neatly while John righted the overturned pitcher and wiped down the counter. The air was no longer filled with tension but something lighter, almost peaceful. As they worked, the girl stole quick glances at the pile of money, as if expecting it to disappear at any moment. Her small fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted one of the bent signs, making sure it was straight before stepping back to admire their work. As they worked, Dwayne glanced over at the girl, noticing how she kept stealing quick looks at the pile of money as if expecting it to disappear at any moment. He wiped his hands on his shorts and leaned slightly against the counter. "So," he said casually, "this really for college?" She looked up, surprised by the sudden question. Yeah, it is. I know I'm still young, but I don't want to wait until it's too late to start saving. My mom works so hard, and I don't want her to worry about how she's going to pay for my school when the time comes. If I can start now, maybe I can make a real difference by the time I'm older." John smiled, clearly impressed. "That's pretty smart. Most kids your age are just thinking about summer vacations and video games." She shrugged. "I guess I just see things differently. If I want to change my future, I have to start now." Dwayne nodded approvingly. "That's a strong mindset. Not a lot of people, no matter how old they are, think that far ahead." The girl hesitated for a second, then glanced between the two men. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," John said. She took a deep breath. "Why did you help me? I mean, you didn't have to. Those guys were dangerous. You could have just walked away." Dwayne exchanged a quick glance with John before responding. "Because it was the right thing to do." John leaned against the counter. "Look, we've both been in a lot of fights, in the ring, sure, but also in life. And one thing we've learned is that when you see someone being treated unfairly, you step in. You don't just stand by and let it happen." Dwayne nodded. "You were standing up for yourself. You didn't back down, even when they tried to intimidate you. That's not something we see every day. You earned that money fair and square, and no one had the right to take it from you." The girl looked down at the counter, processing their words. After a few seconds, she gave a small smile. "Thanks, not just for stopping them, but for believing in me." John smiled. "Hey, you believed in yourself first. That's what matters." They finished tidying up, and soon the stand looked almost as good as new. The girl adjusted one of the signs, making sure it was straight, before stepping back to admire their work. Dwayne took a deep breath, looking around the street to make sure the trouble was truly gone. "So," John said, stretching his arms behind his head, "I think that settles it. You're back in business." The girl nodded, her braids bouncing slightly with the movement. "Yeah, thanks to you guys." Dwayne smiled warmly. "And thanks to you. You handled yourself pretty well back there." She grinned, her confidence returning. "Well, if you ever need another lemonade, you know where to find me." John chuckled, shaking his head. "I might just take you up on that." Dwayne clapped his hands together, breaking the momentary light-heartedness. "All right, we should probably get going before we distract you from your empire building." The girl giggled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Yeah, I've got a business to run." She reached under the counter and pulled out 2 fresh cups, carefully filling them with the last of her lemonade. "Here on the house." Dwayne and John exchanged amused looks before each taking a cup. They lifted them in a small toast, their expressions softening for a brief moment. "To standing up for what's right," Dwayne said, his voice warm. "And to never backing down," John added with a smirk. They took a sip, the lemonade as refreshing as it had been earlier. It was the perfect end to an afternoon filled with chaos and courage. John set his empty cup down and gave her a nod. "Keep working hard, kid. You're going places." Dwayne patted the wooden counter gently. "And don't forget, one day when you've made it, help someone else the way we helped you today." The girl held the cup to her chest, her expression thoughtful. She nodded slowly, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I promise." With that, the 2 men turned and began jogging down the street, resuming the run they had started earlier. Their sneakers slapped rhythmically against the pavement, their figures growing smaller as they moved farther away. The girl watched them go, the weight of their words settling into her mind. She had started this lemonade stand with a simple goal, to save for college, but today had changed everything. She had faced real danger, stood her ground, and found unexpected allies who reminded her of something far more important than money. She wasn't just saving for college anymore. She was building a future. And one day, she would make sure to pass that same kindness forward. The street was quiet again, but the girl still felt the lingering effects of everything that had happened. She stood behind her lemonade stand, looking at the stack of money she had fought so hard to protect. It was still hard to believe that two complete strangers, Dwayne Johnson and John Cena no less, had not only defended her but also believed in her dreams enough to support them. She replayed their words in her head, the ones about standing up for herself and paying kindness forward when the time came. Those words meant more than any amount of money. Dwayne and John were already a block away, their steady jog taking them further down the street. They hadn't said much after leaving the stand, but both of them were still thinking about the encounter. They had stopped for a simple lemonade break, but it had turned into something far more significant. John glanced at Dwayne. You ever think about how the smallest decisions end up being the most important? Dwayne smirked. All the time. They continued running, letting the rhythm of their footsteps fill the space between them. The day was still hot, but the shade of the trees lining the sidewalk made the temperature a little more bearable. They were just about to turn a corner when a distant but familiar sound made them slow down, the deep throaty growl of motorcycle engines. John exhaled sharply. You've got to be kidding me. Dwayne stopped jogging and turned his head slightly, listening. The sound was coming from behind them, growing louder by the second. He exchanged a quick look with John. They didn't need to say anything. They both knew what this meant. Back at the lemonade stand, the girl had just finished stacking her cups when she heard it too. Her stomach tightened. She turned her head slowly, dreading what she would see. The 6 bikers were back. They came roaring down the street, the leader in front, his jaw clenched and his eyes burning with anger. The other 5 trailed closely behind him, their motorcycles rolling to a stop directly in front of the stand. The leader cut the engine, swinging one leg off his bike and standing up. The others followed suit, each one stepping forward in a silent show of intimidation. The girl felt her hands start to tremble, but she quickly clenched them into fists. She wasn't going to show fear, not again. The bald leader took a step toward her, his boots crunching against the pavement. His expression was colder than before, his smirk nowhere to be seen. "You think that was funny?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. The girl didn't answer. One of the other bikers, the one with the missing tooth, snorted. "A couple of wrestlers show up, rough us up a little, and now you think you're safe." The leader's eyes flicked toward the money still sitting behind the counter. His lips curled into a sneer. "We ain't leaving without it this time." The girl swallowed, but stood her ground. "It's my money," she said firmly. The leader tilted his head. "That's the thing, kid. You don't get to decide that." Before he could take another step, something shifted behind him. A shadow fell over the stand. The leader barely had time to react before a massive hand clamped down on his shoulder. "You don't get to decide that either," came a deep, familiar voice. The leader stiffened, slowly turning his head. His face twisted into an expression of barely contained fury. Dwayne Johnson and John Cena stood beside him, their arms crossed over their chests. Both men looked calm, too calm. The kind of calm that came before a storm. The leader jerked his shoulder away from Dwayne's grip, his face contorted with fury. "You two again," he spat, his voice dripping with venom. John raised an eyebrow, unfazed. "Yeah, you should have known." The other bikers tensed, their confidence wavering under the weight of what was about to happen. The leader clenched his fists, his jaw tightening as he glared at them. "You don't know when to quit, do you?" the leader growled, trying to sound intimidating but failing miserably. Dwayne smirked, his expression cold and unyielding. "We could ask you the same thing." The leader hesitated for a moment, glancing at his men. 6 against 2, the odds were still technically in his favor. But the way Dwayne and John stood there, completely calm and unbothered, made it clear that numbers didn't matter here. Finally, he made his decision. He wasn't walking away this time. "Get them!" he snarled, pointing at the 2 men. The girl barely had time to duck behind the stand before chaos erupted once more. The first biker lunged at John, swinging a wild punch aimed at his face. But John sidestepped effortlessly, catching the man's arm mid-swing and twisting it behind his back. With a sharp yank, he flipped the biker over his shoulder, sending him crashing onto the pavement with a heavy thud. Before the man could even groan in pain, John was already moving on to the next attacker. Dwayne, meanwhile, caught another biker mid-punch, blocking the blow with ease before grabbing him by his leather vest. In one fluid motion, he hoisted the man off the ground and slammed him onto the hood of a nearby parked car. The impact left a visible dent in the metal as the biker groaned and rolled off onto the ground. The leader charged at Dwayne, swinging a clenched fist with all his might. But Dwayne saw it coming. At the last second, he sidestepped and grabbed the leader's arm, twisting it into a tight hold. "Still think this is your money?" Dwayne asked, his voice dangerously low. The leader gritted his teeth, refusing to answer. "Didn't think so," Dwayne muttered. Then, with one swift motion, he spun the man around and slammed him face first into a wooden fence. The leader groaned, sliding down onto the ground in a daze. John, meanwhile, was dealing with 2 bikers at once. One of them came at him with a rusty chain, swinging it wildly. John ducked under the first swing, then grabbed the chain mid-air and yanked it forward, causing the biker to stumble toward him. With perfect precision, John planted a boot to the man's chest, sending him flying backward. The second biker rushed in from the side, but John caught him by the arm and threw him into the lemonade stand, knocking over the wooden counter and sending cups flying. The girl gasped, quickly stepping back as the man groaned in pain, tangled in the debris. John glanced at her briefly. "You okay?" She nodded quickly, clutching the money tightly. "Yeah." By now, the remaining bikers realized they were completely outmatched. The man tangled in the lemonade stand pushed himself up, rubbing his head before staggering backward. The others helped each other up, wincing from bruises and aching limbs. John dusted off his hands, looking at them with a satisfied smirk. "Anyone else?" None of them answered. The leader sat up slowly, groaning as he clutched his ribs. He glared up at Dwayne and John with pure hatred, but there was no fight left in him. He knew it was over. Dwayne crossed his arms, his expression firm. "Take your guys and get out of here." The leader spat on the ground, but didn't argue. He knew when he was beaten. He gestured to his men, and one by one, they limped toward their motorcycles. Engines roared to life as they mounted their bikes, their bruised pride evident in the way they avoided eye contact. Before revving his engine, the leader turned to the girl, his lip curling in frustration. "This isn't over," he muttered. The girl met his glare with steady eyes. "Yeah, it is." Dwayne smirked at her words while John let out a low chuckle. Without another word, the leader revved his engine and sped off down the street, his gang trailing behind him. They disappeared into the distance, leaving only the faint echo of their engines behind. Silence settled over the scene once more.
And that's where our story ends. What did you think of this story? Share your emotions in the comments below. We'd love to know what you remember most. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. And if you are in the mood for another exciting story, check out our next video, it's waiting for you. Until then, stay curious, get inspired, and keep exploring the stories that make life extraordinary. See you in the next one.